So we are officially recording. Thank you so much for stepping in to do this on behalf of the SC for Ed community. We are an education community based on focusing on public education in South Carolina. So if you want to just take a minute and introduce yourself, where you're running, and sort of a little bit about what your platform is.
Okay. Well, my name's Keith Gray Sr. I reside in Lancaster, town of Lancaster in Lancaster County. I am running for House District 45, which is the northern half of Lancaster. I'm running against Republican incumbent Brendan Newton. My platform is probably a little different than what you see in this part of the state. I'm running as a progressive on all issues. I have a little more background. I've lived here 17 years. I've gotten very involved with our community. I've been in our Little Theater. I've been active on our Lindsay Pettis Greenway since its inception. I'm involved with the NAACP. I am involved with the Lancaster County Democratic Party. I have been the chair for the last 4 years, ever since the 2016 presidential primary. And I was supporting Senator Sanders then, and this go around as well. So I have worked with a lot of good people, rebuild our county party, trying to promote just an awareness of many of these progressive issues that get talked about on the national level. But our problems here with education and violence and infrastructure are very, very important things that need to be addressed. And I've seen some good people run for this position in the previous cycles. I feel they would have done a good job in Columbia, but they took a middle of the road approach to the politics and frankly spend as much time talking about how they can get along with Republicans as they did issues. And as most of the stuff we see in the middle of the road, they ended up roadkill come election time. So I said, when this came down, I said, okay, I've been recruiting candidates for these offices and all, and it just came down to this go around. I got to walk the talk. If it's good enough for me to try to talk people into taking this on, then it's time for me to step up and take a shot at it. And I'm not going to mince any words or be the least bit waffling on how I feel on the issues of educational reform and healthcare and racial and social justice. So more specifically, in fact, I'm so proud of everything I've got. It's up on my website. It's about 2 pages, and this is just the bullet points. I'm going to develop more later. But on education, provide rational, sustainable financing of public education, because we know it ain't that way now. Increase teacher pay in real terms, not this 4% for the first time in 8 or 9 years. Increase the number of teachers' aides. There's a couple the teachers cannot be overwhelmed in the classroom. We know there are always disciplinary issues. There's always challenges, learning challenges. With my 5 kids, I've had a pretty good range of blessings and challenges. And I've seen it with my grandkids as well. Something I really believe in is the Republican approach is that when things get tough on the budget, the first thing they do is cut the educational budget. And when things get going good, it's the last thing that they address. I believe in that we should stop charter school funding unless there is provision for true accountability. If my taxpayer money is going there, and I still pay some pretty good taxes here, then I want to make sure I'm getting our money's worth. I don't want to be taking it away from the rest of the population. And I went to mostly private parochial schools when I was growing up, but I had several years in the public school system. And I'd say the public school system back in the 60s was a lot better resource than it is these days by a long shot. Then I'm real strong because after college, my first 17 years of working were in the sheet metal trades. Turns out I was able to do better for my family being a sheet metal worker and welder than having a psych and soc degree, though I've always appreciated the college and later did turn it to my advantage when I went into IT. So I feel we should greatly expand trade and technical training availability. There are so many young people out there who they're just not wired to be cooped up in a cubicle. Some of us can handle it. Some people can't, and they're way more gifted with their hands. They need an opportunity to take advantage of their natural skills, not be shoved in, pigeonholed. I've felt this whole emphasis on, if you're not that, especially when it's phrased this way, well, if you don't go to college, you'll never be a success. Sorry, that's not true. And then finally, I think we should expand the apprenticeship programs. I know there's at least something that's kind of a skeleton system here. I was a product of a union apprenticeship program, and it was pretty good and pretty well equipped me for the trades. And then finally, the last thing is what's really been brought home with the pandemic is that every child should have access to broadband so that they can follow up on their, if we're in a jam like this with, the distance learning but even before that, so many kids in the rural areas, especially like here in Lancaster County, some of them don't even have or barely have dial-up service. And I don't even want to think of how bad that is. I know how crappy this is right here with the so-called high-speed Comporium service I have in town. So that's most of my education.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and start with the questions. So the first question is, what is your opinion of the state of public education in South Carolina today?
In really bad need of a lot more support from the state. To be blunt, about 10, 12 years ago, I stopped trying to talk my kids into moving here with the grandkids because it isn't what it should be. It isn't what it could be. I know so many teachers in the system here at all levels, and they're great people, and they're dealing with just not being given enough resources and certainly not being given enough respect. So I think there's a lot of different things that need to be addressed. As I said, the funding needs to be significantly beefed up. I get a little annoyed about tax breaks given as incentives when I know what's happening when they do that. It locks in what that community, city or county can get in the future from that firm. And then I get even more annoyed when the firms gripe about, well, none of these people are, we can employ. They're not employable. Right. And you just took away from the future resource. You wanted that future resource. Anyway, so more teachers, so that at least effectively smaller classrooms. So there's a better ratio of instructor, more counselors and all, because the police contribute. I'm afraid that for the most part, the police, in most cases, their presence just sets up a different environment that sets up this school to prison pipeline. And I've seen, there's programs all over the country, and there's one right down in Richland County that shows it can be done much better and probably costs less, frankly. Yeah, because what we spend per prisoner is way too much more what could be spent in preventive and giving kids opportunities to do something better with their lives.
Okay. If elected, what would be the first step you would take to improve public education?
We definitely have to the very first thing right off the bat is throw some serious money in the right places. Uh, Following that, we would be coming along with hiring and retaining teachers. I certainly understand why they don't stay long. We lose 20%, 25% of the new year, each new year. That tells you management's all screwed up. That kind of turnover is not doing anyone any good. It's inefficient as a business, and it's hard on the kids, and it's disruptive. So the money would have to be the first thing. And as I see this country and even this state, it's not a lack of money; it's a lack of the political will to put the money where it needs to go.
Okay. If elected, what would you do to address the funding of public education?
Well, I need to do a lot more study of the infamous was it Bill 388. I understand that it was an attempt to reorganize and reform the previous system, and evidently there are some serious unintended consequences of that bill. It seems like the impact is hitting more the small businesses than it does the big corporations. Something's wrong there. It seems it's way too zip code dependent. That where you live is going to say a lot more about whether you get a decent education or not than anything else. I think the money needs to be distributed evenly, and even might be a little reverse discrimination in the case if we've got rural areas that are way worse off, and there's going to have to be a lot more money put to them. But the funding formulas I don't think are right. To get explicit, I need to do a lot more study on it.
Okay, and the last question, in your opinion, what would be a successful accountability system for education in South Carolina? So right now, I'll expand, it's a heavy focus on high stakes testing is what the accountability system looks like. And part of that is because of, federal mandates, but even with the new federal mandates, there's a lot more flexibility in how states can be held accountable. But for South Carolina, it's really focused on high stakes testing for students, which then bleeds over into, how school teachers are expected to work, and then school districts and all that. So what to you would look like an effective accountability system?
I don't believe in the high stakes as it works right now. There needs to be testing. You always need to have an idea how you're doing the progress. If you're progressing with a given student, the feedback's necessary. No, do you need to put a little more resources in a given student in a given classroom, even? So, of course, one of the best things is how many kids come out with a diploma from high school that really have learned the material, not just the social promotion and passing on. And I mean that in the sense that if students' problems, individuals, is caught early enough, and then there's the resources in the classroom to help someone get up to speed, up to level, then they're not going to be dropping out. And so the dropout rate would be an indicator. You still need the testing, a reasonable amount of testing for the material. But I always felt the main focus, not focus, but the main purpose of school was to learn how to learn. Learning how to learn, understanding context, the basics, reading and writing, and arithmetic problem solving. There are ways to test those things incrementally without everyone spending all their time trying to teach to the test. The test just being a check, not a live and die thing, but just an assessment. More specifically, again, it takes more research.
It does.
And a lot of input from the teachers. I've worked in an IT environment. I've worked in a production environment. And if management doesn't listen to the people on the front lines, it ain't gonna work. So.
Well, those are the questions, the official questions that we have for you. Is there anything before I hit the stop record button, anything else that you want teachers and those supporters of public education to know before we sign off?
That press any candidate, any incumbent to at least be as specific as I have been, and these wiggly answers that we get from too many don't cut it. And if I don't know an answer yet, if I've identified a problem, but I don't know the answer yet, I promise I'm going to find out and explore the different ways of solving something. And that's going to be with input from the teachers, people in the front lines.
Well, Mr. Gray, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop recording.